All right, it is great to be here, and again, thank you for your patience. I was a bit tardy today. It's been a bit of a journey, but I am happy to be here. So, without further ado, let us begin with a bit of time travel. We are in Florence. It's the turn of the century. Spiritualism and theosophy are still in vogue, and many people across the city are attending seances and dabbling in myriad occult activities. The fadingly dashing but wizardly journalist, Charles Godfrey Leland, is moving in these circles. He is a many-sided cosmopolitan man, an American expatriate who has lived unconventionally for over half a century, fighting and writing against slavery, teaching art and design, and penning dozens of wide-ranging works on philology, history, psychology, and folklore. And here is I described him as dashing. So this is Leland in the 1850s on the left, and Leland in 1893 looking very Merlin-esque on the right. So that is 1893 is when he is resident in Florence. Leland's been residing in Florence for almost 10 years. And in the words of his niece, Elizabeth Robbins Pennell, his chief friends are witches. Among them is a canny and well-connected fortune teller with roots in the north-central province of Forlì-Cesena, in the modern-day region of Emilia-Romagna. Her name is Maddalena. And for years, she's been feeding Leland stories, spells, poems, all kind of folkloric treats from Florence, wider Tuscany, and the upland villages around her home district. In January 1897, Maddalena mails him one final morsel, a strange manuscript that Leland calls Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches. And you have here Maddalena. This is pretty much the only photograph we have of her, and it appears in a biography of Leland by his niece, Elizabeth Robbins Pennell. And then on the left, we have just an excerpt from the appendix of Aradia, where Leland is basically describing how he acquired the manuscript. Okay, so I'll just read it out. So long as the year 1886, I learned that there was in existence a manuscript setting forth the doctrines of Italian witchcraft, and I was promised that, if possible, it should be obtained for me. In this I was for a time disappointed, but having urged it on Maddalena, my collector of folklore, while she was leading a wandering life in Tuscany, to make an effort to obtain or recover something of the kind, I at last received from her on the 1st of January 1897 from Colla Valdese near Siena the manuscript entitled Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches. So the document, Aradia, contains a smorgasbord of legends and rituals. Leland is already familiar with many of these, but he is particularly intrigued by its poetic savior narrative. In the text, the pagan goddess Diana intervenes in mortal affairs by sending her daughter Aradia to save disenfranchised human beings from suffering. Aradia offers a destiny-changing, Promethean-like weapon. She teaches the lower rungs of humankind sorcery, an art that provides them with the means to utterly vanquish their oppressors. Leland feels like he has stumbled upon a gold mine. For him, the gospel is part of a larger, fast-disappearing witchcraft experience, witchcraft scripture. He asks Maddalena for more information on its origins, but his efforts are in vain. She apparently never writes him again. Leland publishes what he describes as an edited version of Maddalena's manuscript in 1899, and that is the published Aradia that we all know. Leland dies in March 1903 without revealing the mystery. So, voila, the story of Aradia in a nutshell. Now, let's zoom forward a few decades to the 1950s. The book finds its way into the capable hands of the mother of Wicca, Doreen Valiente. Valiente uses it to rewrite rituals that have come down from Wicca's founder, Gerald Gardner. As a result of Valiente's repurposing, Aradia becomes a book that, in many ways, shapes the philosophical and aesthetic landscape of modern Wicca. Okay? I'd like to conclude this little introduction by quoting from Professor Ronald Hutton's widely esteemed Triumph of the Moon. In this second edition, which was published in 2019, Hutton writes that there seems to be a current scholarly consensus that Aradia does not describe a genuine Italian witch religion. He goes on to say that nevertheless it, that is, scholarly consensus, fails to clinch the matter of how Aradia was written and by whom. I'll say it again. Scholarly consensus fails to clinch the matter of how Aradia was written and by whom. And this is the context in which I have written Aradia's Hidden Hand. Despite over a century's worth of admirable and groundbreaking research, we're still very much in the dark about Aradia's provenance. Until now, scholarship has generally entertained three explanations for Aradia's authorship. Leland wrote the entire thing himself. Maddalena forged it and tricked him, or the two of them compiled it together. As regards co-authorship, no one to date has considered Leland's close friend and collaborator, Roma Lister. Active as a writer from 1893 until 1927, she led two lives. One as a socialite who rubbed shoulders with the leading artists, intellectuals, and politicians of the day, and the other as an occultist who evoked spirits and channeled messages from the great beyond. As one book reviewer noted in March 1926, Miss Lister is most interesting on the subject of the occult. She has considerable psychic powers and apparently would not reprobate the appellation of witch. And here we have a picture of Roma Lister and a quote by Charles Godfrey Leland, which I will get to in a moment. Raised in Rome by folk magicians, Lister developed a wide network of her own witch informants. From these, she collected dozens of tales, spells, and songs, many of which Leland included in his books, The Unpublished Legends of Virgil and The Legends of Florence. Unlike Maddalena, with whom she was acquainted, by the way, Lister was a member of several international societies, such as the Italian Folklore Society, the International Council of Women, the International Congress of Orientalists, the International Congress of Christian Archaeology, and, of course, the Theosophical Society. Lister maintained a high level of public visibility during her lifetime, and as a result, she remains the only witch in Leland's direct network whose biographical and genealogical details are corroborated by multiple documentary sources. The bulk of her literary output, however, has been overlooked, but that all changes now. Interestingly, Lister and Leland had already been working closely together on witchcraft subjects for at least 4 years when Maddalena delivered the manuscript to Leland in 1897. According to Leland, it was Maddalena who taught Lister the art of reading cards, that's the quote here, as well as other branches of the black art, as he puts it. Lister also served as an intermediary between Leland and Maddalena, sometimes even transcribing Maddalena's text to make them more readable. Much like Maddalena, Lister was a fixer in her own right. She corresponded with and interviewed several different witches in Florence and in the Roman countryside. Furthermore, multiple sources attest to the fact that Lister, in addition to being a researcher, was a medium and automatic writer. In my book, I contend that her earliest spiritualistic experiences date to 1892, which is about a year before she met Leland. Nevertheless, while collaborating with Leland from 1893 to at least 1897, Lister continued to experiment with and develop her own occult powers. Her aunt, Julia Rosencrantz, a highly respected spiritualist medium, mainly oversaw her psychic training, arranging for her to learn particular techniques and taking her to seances with famed mediums like Eusapia Palladino. And here I have another picture of Roma Lister, and here she is done. Roma Lister, okay, from a photograph. And on the left, we have an excerpt from an Australian newspaper, I believe, and it says, "There are stories of two worlds." So this is a review. This is a bit of a review of her. So Lister put out 2 memoirs, and this is a response to the first one. "There are stories of two worlds, the real and the psychic, and in Miss Roma Lister's reminiscences, social and political," that's her first memoir. The author is of distinguished Italian-English parentage and ancestry, was born in Rome, became a notable hostess there, and enjoyed the confidence of kings and queens and celebrities of many nationalities. The writer of the preface, in her memoirs, describes her as a child of destiny, entering on a rather enchanted life. Enchanted is the right word to describe the career of this cultured woman. A good deal of the book is concerned with the occult, about things which seem incredibly fantastic to most of us who live in the workaday world of hard facts. So, to continue, another major influence on, oh, by the way, before I go to the other influence, I need to show you Baroness Julia Rosencrantz, who was Roma Lister's aunt, and I've written about Rosencrantz for the Psychic College blog. So you can find out a bit more about her there, if you like. But so this is one of Lister's strongest influences. She was the wife of the Danish diplomat Baron Ivar Holger Rosencrantz and mother to Harold Rosencrantz and the writer Paul Rosencrantz, described by contemporaries as a great theosophist and spiritualist and a woman of rare intelligence. Rosencrantz was a popular hostess who conducted or organized numerous sessions with internationally renowned mediums in the fin de siècle. She frequently invited Lister to seances in Rome and Florence, and I wish I had a better picture, but that's all I have on Julia, on the Baroness. Another major influence on Lister was her friend, Walburga Lady Paget, an Anglo-American noblewoman, theosophist, activist, and the owner of Villa Belloscardo, a palatial manor located in the hills above Florence. And this is her behind me, Walburga Lady Paget, and Belloscardo here, her home. In 1907, Paget brought out Colloquies with an Unseen Friend, a book whose contents she collated from hours and hours of automatic writing sessions with Lister. Writing under the influence of an Atlantean spirit, Lister traversed hidden worlds, divulging via her spirit-possessed stylus. in arcana of strange and hair-raising histories. She narrated the rise and fall of Atlantis, declared the existence of underground cities and prehistoric fauna in Patagonia, explained the process and purpose of reincarnation, prophesied about future world wars, and mapped how certain secret societies influenced the French Revolution and other historical events. Although the book was composed several years after Aradia, between 1903 and 1905, it is proof that Lister had the capability to transmit varied persuasive mythic narratives. Moreover, in the text, Paget, who appears under the pseudonym Ermenegilda, acknowledged that prior to their 1903 collaboration, Lister had developed relations and worked with several spirit guides. Hence, a bold but valid question presents itself before us. What if Lister channeled elements of Aradia? Both Lister's and Leland's writings make it clear that Lister's associates during the 1890s included various vernacular magicians in Rome, Florence, and Greater Tuscany. In colloquies, Paget also mentioned that Lister would sometimes go about with her witches. That's a direct quote. What if one or several of these folklore-minded witches had participated, like Paget, in a series of intimate, automatic writing sessions with Lister? Just as colloquies reflects the spiritualistic and theosophical interests of its contributors, spirit writings produced within a circle of Italian folk witches would likely reflect the views and desires of those same witches. Theoretically, this would be the sort of context in which something like Aradia could be transmitted. You'll have to read my book, however, to find out where that rabbit hole leads. Automatic writing hypothesis aside, it would still be difficult to argue that Lister did not contribute to Aradia in some way. Lister supplied folkloric materials for at least 4 of Leland's books, and when Leland received the Aradia document from Maddalena in January 1897, he was still receiving masses of collected folklore from Lister. In fact, Leland incorporated Lister's collections into his book, The Unpublished Legends of Virgil. Both The Unpublished Legends of Virgil and Aradia were published between the autumn and winter of 1899. Although Aradia came out slightly earlier, Leland acknowledged that some of its contents were drawn from unpublished legends. This means that both Aradia and Unpublished Legends drew from primary source materials that were in Leland's possession well before he sent his draft of Aradia to his publisher in 1897. In the very least, Lister should now be seen as one of the hidden women who laid the groundwork for the revival of modern witchcraft. Evidence shows that Leland mainly relied, and by the way, at the time, Leland was in his late 70s. Okay, so he's sending out, he has Maddalena on the ground, he has Lister on the ground, and they're doing a lot, in fact, like 95% of the legwork on his behalf. Evidence shows that Leland mainly relied on Maddalena, Lister, and their respective informants for on-the-ground data on the more obscure aspects of Italian regional beliefs and customs. Consequently, it was their work that helped to inform and shape Leland's perceptions of what contemporary Italian witchcraft looked like. Thus, Aradia and Wicca could therefore be seen as products of this collaborative, mostly women-driven research and collection process. Like Diana's daughter, Aradia, who shared hidden truths with humankind, Lister helped make the unseen seen by bringing long-overlooked folklore back into the public spotlight. Ultimately, magical women supplied Aradia's source material, and Valiente, Doreen Valiente, another magical woman, adapted their contributions stoking a fire destined to power a new religion of witches. That's all I have for you today. Thank you.